Good evening, Bunny Muxrose. Hello and welcome to the studio. If Twitch finally starts to actually put my signal out, to me at least. And I trust you've had a good evening, morning, afternoon, Bunny Muxrose. Oh, time zones are terrible when you're broadcasting. Because of course everybody's all over the world, so you can't easily say good evening, good morning or whatever. But I'm back from holiday and back to carving the dragon. Which is what we're going to carry on with tonight. So I'm going to start by just rounding this this finger bone off, or wing bone off, just to see what it looks like. Thank you very much, that's most kind of you to say so. I do tend to have my hands in the way of it most of the time at the moment. Excuse my voice, I've had a cold, or two colds over the past 2 weeks, and just at the moment my voice has got the worst of it. It's a lot better than it was yesterday, but it's still not right. I think oh dear, I think that bone doesn't look too bad. It's a bit, I mean, these bones are a little bit thick really, you know, in diameter compared to the rest of the dragon. I might see if I can make them a bit thinner before we finish, but finish carving the piece, but at least it's a good working start at the moment. Having said which, I mean, I'm just looking at my own hand and thinking the fingers in relation to the wrist. At least about half the width of the wrist, so I suspect it's, should be at least a third, minimum, a maximum a third, I'd have thought, looking at my hand to my wrist. Yeah, I think they're definitely a bit too thick. Okay, that's no problem. Enjoy your day, Bunny Muxrose. That's okay. You don't need to apologise. Life is what it is, and I thank you for dropping in and saying hello. It's been a little. Obviously, I've been away for a while, so I was about to say it's been a little while since I've seen you, but of course it would be because I wasn't here. Have a good day, anyway. Right, for anybody that's new to the studio, good evening. It's evening in the UK, which is where I am. So rather than try and battle the understanding of time zones, I'll just stick with a good evening. And if you've not seen my stream before, I'm a somewhat I hop from craft to craft, or art form to art form, depending on how you describe things. This at the moment is called relief carving. I'm not quite sure where the term comes from, but it's relieving the image out of a block of wood. It's not a 3D, it's not a full 3D carve. It's kind of 2.5 dimensions. That's kind of my description for it, because you won't ever see the back side of this dragon. You'll only see the front and a little bit of the side of it, but not you won't actually be able to see behind it. It's going to be stuck on this plaque that it's been carved out of, and it will remain like that, hence the sort of 2.5D description I put on it. It's been carved out of some wood. It's been carved out of wood. Hey, that's a kind of surprise, really. It's been carved out of a wood that's in America is called basswood. In Europe and elsewhere, it either gets called basswood or European lime. It's a relatively easy wood to carve. It does have its own difficulties. The fact that it's a fairly soft wood and that's easy to carve is in itself one of the difficulties, because it does mean it breaks fairly easily as well, or it will split fairly easily, which is one of the downsides of it. So if this was a harder wood like oak, for example, I'd be able to almost carve these wings completely underneath, so they stood free of the this plaque at the back. With basswood I couldn't do that, because a small pressure on the wing would just snap it off. But one of the advantages is it's a soft wood, so it carves fairly easily. Cammy the Human, thank you very much for following the studio. That is that's great. Thank you very much. I do appreciate you doing that, and I'm glad you're enjoying what you see. Yes, I was just describing the wood, in that it does carve fairly easily. It's a fairly soft wood to carve, which also will take a reasonable amount of detail, which is one of the advantages of it. It does have a fairly close grain, which helps in the carving as well. It means it takes less. There's less skill required to do anything, any particular thing, than would be if you were carving in something like pine, which has quite a coarse grain, or like mahogany, which is a really hard wood. And I mean, just to give you an example of, you might be able to see or might not be able to see, but this is relief carved. It's a good 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch deep. This was a solid block of wood, and this is the surface of the original block of wood. So all of this background has been cut away, and that was done using hand tools like this chisel here. Whereas another piece that was done on stream is this one, which is done in oak. Not oak. It's I've forgotten what wood it is, Nick. What wood's that? Oh, blimey, I can't actually remember what I carved. It's ash. That's it. It's ash. And this wood is really hard. It's not as hard as mahogany or something like that, but it's quite a hard wood to carve. And the relief carving here, this background here took almost 2 weeks, and as you can see, it's not very deep, and that's because it was really hard to do. Really should have been using mallet driven tools rather than hand driven tools, or even power tools, in carving ash, whereas this is a lot easier. Now, so I'm using hand tools. Well, no specific reason that I must use hand tools. I do have power tools available to me. I have some high-speed rotary carvers behind me and some more powerful ones out in the workshop. But mainly I'm not using them because they're behind me and I can't get a camera over there, and I can't really get them on the desk here. But they're also extremely good at turning wood into sawdust, and by sawdust I mean dust, and it gets everywhere. So I normally prefer to do that using an extractor when I'm using those tools. It's a little bit noisy to use that on stream, and I also generally prefer to wear a respirator type mask as well, which of course would make it really difficult for me to talk to you guys if I was wearing one of those. So that's mainly the reason for using the hand tools, even though it does take actually longer to do quite a bit of it using the hand tools. Now then, the dragon here is a representation. You can see the reference image down there that I'm using. So it's roughly the same layout as the reference image there. The reference image is a drawing made by an artist, actually an illustrator, called Michael Wheland, and it's a drawing, or it's an illustration that was done for a book cover, and the book, or the books that this illustration was used in is one of a series written by McCaffrey about a world called Pern, where there are dragons like this, where people ride the dragons, sit on the back here just up by the neck, and they fight a menace together in the world. Michael Wheland was her favourite illustrator because he understood, or was able to imagine, the sort of dragons that Anne McCaffrey had in mind when she wrote the books. And they looked like what she wanted them to look like. They weren't, whilst they do breathe fire, they weren't scaly, fearsome looking beasts. They were intimidating. They're large, fire breathing things, but they are a relatively friendly dragon. And I happen to just like the illustrations that Mike Whelan did. So this is, I won't say it's a copy, but it is based on his image that you can see in the bottom left there. Now this is of a particular, the illustration that Michael's drawn is of a particular dragon in the series of books from Anne McCaffrey, and I can actually tell you what dragon it is, and the reason I can do that is because the dragon is white. There is only one dragon in